Welcome to the podcast summary of Kirkcaldy. Kirkcaldy's story is unusually easy to picture because the whole town seems to stretch out in a line, right along that famous main street that helped earn it the name, the Lang Toun. And once you start following that line, you get almost everything else. The harbor, the mills, the linoleum boom, the proud civic history, the famous names, and also the harder reality that industrial success didn't lift every part of town equally. It's a place with deep roots, a very specific shape, and a habit of turning local history into something much bigger than you'd expect. The nickname started simply enough. Early maps in the 16th and 17th centuries show a main street of about 0.9 miles, which already stood out. But Kirkcaldy kept lengthening as it absorbed nearby communities like Lang Toun, Pathhead, Sinclairtown, and Gallatown, until that long thoroughfare ran to nearly 4 miles. That shape wasn't random. It grew from narrow burgage plots, a market street, and little burns running downhill to the sea. So commerce, housing, and the waterfront all developed in a kind of long practical ribbon. Even Dysart, once a separate royal burgh, was folded in during 1930 after its council went bankrupt, which stretched Kirkcaldy's historic footprint further still. Long before linoleum, Kirkcaldy was a trading port with serious reach. From the early 1500s, its harbor connected it with the Low Countries, the Baltic, England, northern France, and Spain. Ships carried out coal, salt, hides, wool, herring, and salmon, and brought back things like timber, wine, and spices. That's a pretty vivid reminder that this wasn't some isolated coastal town minding its own business. The 17th century civil wars hit that maritime life brutally. At least 480 men were killed, and the number of registered ships reportedly collapsed from 100 in the 1640 to 1644 period to just 12 by 1660. Trade and shipbuilding did revive later. Between 1778 and 1793, the town produced 38 vessels, and whaling had a brief moment too, before the last Kirkcaldy whaler, the Brilliant, was sold in 1866. Kirkcaldy's civic story starts under Dunfermline Abbey, with early grants going back to 1075 and formal confirmation as an abbey-controlled burgh in 1327. A big turning point came in 1451, when a fee-firm charter handed local bailies and councillors real responsibility for administration and fiscal policy. That's the town getting a firmer grip on its own affairs. Then in 1644, Charles I granted royal burgh status and finally ended the abbey's jurisdiction. That status lasted all the way to the local government reorganization of 1975, after which Kirkcaldy became part of Kirkcaldy District, and later the wider Fife Council area. If one industry stamped itself on Kirkcaldy, it was linoleum. The town had already been active in coal, salt, linen, and shipbuilding, but industrial floor covering changed the scale of everything. Michael Nairn's floorcloth factory, founded in 1847, helped pioneer factory production methods. Then Frederick Walton's patent expired in 1876, and Kirkcaldy manufacturers moved into linoleum proper. By 1883, there were 7 factories employing around 1,300 people. That kind of concentration can make a town prosperous and vulnerable at the same time, and that's basically what happened here. As linoleum declined from the mid-1960s, the population dropped from 53,750 in 1961 to 47,962 by 1981. The industry never vanished entirely. It survives on a smaller scale under Swiss ownership through Forbo, which feels very Kirkcaldy somehow. Less empire, more endurance. The population tells the broader arc pretty clearly. Kirkcaldy grew from 3,248 people in 1801 to 34,079 in 1901, then 49,050 in 1951, as manufacturing and urban expansion pushed well beyond the medieval core. By 2022, it stood at 51,117, making it Fife's second largest settlement and Scotland's 11th most populous. A 2016 projection suggested the wider area would grow by 18% by 2026. Today, the economy is led more by services, retail, and construction than by heavy industry, with major employers, including NHS Fife, Fife College, Forbo, Whitworth, and Smith Anderson. But the town's history hasn't resolved neatly into shared prosperity. Town and Town ranked among the 5% most deprived areas in Scotland, and the wider area recorded 7,000 benefit claimants in 2010. In June 2017, job seekers' allowance stood at 2.8%. So alongside all the pride and resilience, there's a very current story about inequality that still matters. Kirkcaldy packs in a huge historical range. There are Bronze Age cist burials, dating from roughly 2500 to 500 BC. And then much later Ravenscraig Castle, one of Britain's early castles designed around artillery defense. The Old Kirk Square Western Tower, dating from around 1500, is the oldest surviving building in the former burgh. After it closed for worship in 2008, it reopened as a venue for music and drama, which is a nice way for an old building to keep speaking. Modern civic landmarks matter too. Kirkcaldy Galleries, Beveridge Park, and a Maggie's Cancer Care Center designed by Zaha Hadid, her first building in the UK. And the War Memorial brings another layer of perspective. It commemorates 1,012 people from the First World War and 452 from the Second, which says a lot about the scale of sacrifice tied up with the town's industrial era. Kirkcaldy's best-known intellectual resident is Adam Smith, who wrote The Wealth of Nations at his mother's High Street home between 1765 and 1767. It's fitting that the town's main theater now carries his name. The place has produced or raised a striking mix of people. Engineer Sir Sanford Fleming, Gordon Brown, Val McDermott, Coldplay bassist Guy Berryman, David Steele, and Bertha Wilson, the first woman appointed to Canada's Supreme Court. And then there's the Links Market, which began as a farmer's market and is described as Europe's longest street fair. It marked its 700th anniversary in 2004, which is the kind of number that makes your local annual event seem a bit underachieving. The town's sporting life has its own bragging rights. Raith Rovers scored a British record, 142 goals in 34 matches during the 1937 to 1938 season, which is honestly absurd in the most enjoyable way. Their biggest modern high came in 1994, when they won the League Cup by beating Celtic 6-5 on penalties. That sent them into the UEFA Cup, where they reached the second round before losing to Bayern Munich. An exceptional European run for a Scottish club outside the top tier. Kirkcaldy is also home to the Fife Flyers, founded in 1938 and described as the UK's oldest ice hockey team. They joined Britain's Elite League in 2011 to 2012, giving the town a sporting identity that goes well beyond football alone. So Kirkcaldy isn't just a long town on the map. It's a place where street layout, harbor trade, industry, civic ambition, and cultural memory all still show through. The Lang Toun turns out to be a very good nickname, because once you start tracing that line, a lot of Scottish history comes into view with it. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.